When did you get your first interest in sports? Do you remember the first moment memory that got you hooked on, well, what now is 3 sports, but what was the point that led you to say, I want to be an athlete?
I mean, I feel like I was always just like coerced into sports just because like my family did it, my brothers did it. So I just was doing sports. But I feel like there was a moment, I'm pretty sure in 7th grade, where I was watching a women's college basketball game and I just realized like this is really what I want to do in my future. And from then on I just started like trying to take it as serious as possible and like, you know, progress and like be the best possible player I could be.
Do you remember what game that was?
It was probably a South Carolina game.
Yeah, okay, that would make, because by that time they were kind of a big deal and still are.
Yeah.
They're the national champions. You mentioned your family having a background in sports, so if you don't mind, what sports did your parents or siblings take up?
Well, I know my mom back in Nigeria, she used to do a lot of running, but it was never a serious thing. My dad's not really an athlete guy, but he loved playing soccer back in the day. I know I have a brother, I have 2 brothers. I have David and Michael. David, he's over at St. Thomas right now playing football. And, you know, he played basketball and football in high school, and so did my other brother, too. He's not playing football right now, but, you know, he's still a great mentor. But I just really look up to both of them just because of how, like, you know, relentless their work ethic is, especially, like, my other brother, David. You know, he's doing super good at St. Thomas, and he's just being a really good player, and he's, like, being a model for me, and I really look up to him for that.
I suppose he's a few years older, but my first thought was, oh, they're not going to be sharing the same space, I think. You know, would you mind or would you be interested in playing alongside him as a teammate over at St. Thomas?
Oh, if I had the chance to, maybe, but I feel like that's super out of reach just because of the age difference, and I don't know.
Maybe on a rec team
or
semi-pro team. Well, you can't really play for the Vixen,
right?
And whatnot. But what position does he play at St. Thomas?
He plays inside linebacker.
Inside linebacker, and you're a lineman.
Yep.
Or a line woman. How do you tell folks when you mention, oh, I play football? Because I'm so used to, it's like with basketball, man on man. I'll see that from time to time, even if I'm calling a women's game, which is a little bit of a disconnect. But do you call yourself a line woman, lineman? How do you?
I try to like not differentiate, like just like I try to not
differentiate.
Differentiate myself from everything else. I don't want to make myself stand out. I'm part of a team. I don't want to be like, oh, I'm a woman. Oh, I do this, I do that. I just want to be part of my team, and I just want to be a team player for my team.
That is the diplomatic response, if I may say so myself. But it's one of those, and I certainly wouldn't want to emphasize the differences, but I've always found that interesting, all these sports, and we've grown up talking about linemen or defensemen, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was kind of a fun little quirk when you get women playing sports that have been traditionally played by men. So who were your idols in the sport? And this could be any of them, but when you decided, all right, this is what I want to do, what players, or it could be family members, it could be anybody, who are the people that inspired you to continue this path of athletics?
Oh, for sure my brother. Just a lot of college athletes, like, you know, Audie Crooks, Angel Reese, Alyssa Peely, just a bunch of people who are like big time names right now that I've seen like come out, like Paige Beckers, just come, like especially people who came out of Minnesota. It's just crazy to see them thrive, like knowing that I was just alongside of them and they just like shot up. You know, there's Cody Lindenberg at the U of M. I kind of grew up with him. My brothers were friends with him, and it's just like I was with their family all the time. So it's just like great to see athletes out of Minnesota go and just do really big things.
What kind of feedback or tips when you told your brother, I'm guessing there was a conversation when you told them, hey, I'm going to suit up for football. How did he take it? And perhaps how has David, right? How has he helped you, even though you can't be at the same school on the same team, how has he helped you get acclimated to the sport? Because as being a line person, And him being a linebacker, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what position, but
Right.
in particular your positions, it gets real physical.
Yeah. I remember the time I told him I was gonna play football. We just got food together, and I told him that I was like interested, and I think I wanted to do it. And he supported me 100% fully, just because he's really big on just like letting me do something, and just he wants to see me fail, like a big brother, just a big brother type, like way to look at things. So I mean,
He's supporting you and wants to see you fail.
Yeah. It's just big
huh?
brother stuff. He wants to see me do something and literally quit at it. But that's something
and
that,
now you're here to show him
yep,
up, right? It's
that's
like,
something in our family dynamic. You want to make someone do something and then see them quit, but I'm not a quitter. I do things and I'm going to do it full-heartedly. So, I mean, I took it up, I did it. Like, to this day, if I asked him to go outside right now and help me out with some drills or do anything with me, he'd do it, of course, because not only is it going to benefit him, it's going to benefit me too. Just because if I play O-line or if I do D, he could block for me or I could block for him. We could work on gaps, stunts, anything like that. It would benefit the both of us. So he's super supportive.
what has it been like? I imagine you're usually one of the taller figures in your class, and I'm guessing it helps for football, basketball, being up on the front lines and being down low, but how have you adapted into that when you saw yourself shooting higher than almost everybody? I'm guessing there's some taller folks out there
Yeah.
in football, but what is it like? How have you handled life being a taller female athlete?
I feel like a lot of female athletes, especially the ones who are taller, like struggle into like getting into their body, like when they grow like an absurd amount when they're younger. I feel like I actually took that super well. I know that I was way bigger than everybody else in elementary school, pretty much all of middle school, but we get to high school, it starts evening out with the guys and stuff. But I feel like throughout all of those phases of my life, I found a way to just kind of move naturally with my body and let myself grow, and figuring out ways to like figure out how to work with my body instead of like against it. Just because, you know, when you grow as fast, you know, you grow, 6 inches, 6 months, so it's just hard sometimes to get used to your body, but I feel like I took that really well and I used it to my advantage.
And what you talked about when you're younger, I know some folks, typically older ones, but even those around your age have mentioned it as well. Sometimes there's that awkward sense, that awkward feeling in elementary school, and as you noted in high school, it evens out, and again out in the football field, you kind of blend in.
Of
but
course.
what was that like, and what do you think helped you? You mentioned being comfortable with yourself. What do you think helped you become comfortable with your height and with the fact that, yeah, you might be tall, but there's a whole lot more to you?
Definitely playing sports. I feel like it would be harder to be okay with how tall you are, especially as a girl in this like day and age. If you like are not doing anything, it's just, you know, harder. You know, you could get picked on and stuff like that. But playing sports and just like dominating people just because I'm way bigger than them, it boosted my self-esteem and made me feel better and made me feel like I could do anything without having to worry about my height or anything like that.
Not to mention these days, if anyone tried to pick on you, you could just tackle them or sack them or pancake block them if you're on the O-line.
Yeah.
Or, you know, post up on them. I like to think you have a few tools that would bring them down to earth real quick. I tease, of course. And another thing, I don't know what your experience has been, but another common refrain I've heard from folks are finding clothes and shoes that fit. What has that experience been like for you growing up?
Growing up, super hard, especially as a kid, and you can't go to the kids section and get anything kid size. Just go straight to the adult men's XL and get something that you feel comfortable in. I mean, having a big brother made life so much easier. I mean, to this day, I still steal his clothes, both of them. So, I mean, just hand-me-downs are like the best thing. It's like a jackpot.
So you went straight to the adults as a kid?
Yeah.
Like, I'm wondering, How fast did you grow up?
I feel like maybe by third, fourth grade, I was already like 5'6", 5'7", and then it just kept going. I grew a lot in middle school. From like 6th grade to 7th grade, I was like 6 foot, and then I feel like I just recently grown a couple of inches. So I think I'm done for now. Yeah.
Well, I'd hope you would be done at some point, because if you kept growing, it could get real awkward fast.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. So, well, I suppose having brothers helps. I'm guessing, well, for clothes, I'm guessing shoes will be worn out, but
Yeah.
Did you go through the same thing there too?
Yeah. I mean, my feet, but I feel like my feet got pretty big pretty fast, and then they stopped growing. Yeah.
So, what sport did you take up first?
Basketball for sure. I mean, I did dabble a little bit in soccer and all those other sports you play as a kid, but basketball was my first true sport that I took up.
I would say it makes sense because that was the first game you watched, but it's fascinating. Like, it was just a few years ago you talked about being in 7th grade. So
Yeah.
Did you try out sports before then, or?
Yeah, I started playing basketball in kindergarten.
Okay.
But
I was
7th
like,
grade was when
what?
7th grade was when I really, like, my eyes opened for the sport, and I got that, like, click in my mind.
Okay, and there's never a bad time. It's never too late to get started. But when
Right.
you said 7th grade, I'm going, that, like,
Not too
it
long
sounds
ago.
like
Yeah.
you had been involved from what I've seen from you. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it looks like you played a little longer than that.
Yeah,
So
I have.
kindergarten?
Yeah, since kindergarten.
And when did the other sports come into play? Because I remember reading this article about you doing football in 8th grade, but when did you start exploring these other sports?
Yeah, I started football in 7th grade, and I was horrible. And then I progressively got better. Freshman year was a really good year for us, and sophomore year was good, just like watching like the varsity play and, you know, getting a couple snaps for myself and, you know, playing JV. And for track, I just started track last year, my freshman year, and I just finished my sophomore year a couple weeks ago.
So by the time you get to middle school, you already have played several years of basketball. What was it about football that attracted you?
A lot of my friends did it, and my brothers did it. So, and I felt like I had the size-wise to, you know, be on the field, so I decided to give it a try.
And you were just saying your first go at it was a little rough.
Yeah.
What do you remember from suiting up for the first time? Because by then you already had played how many basketball games?
Yeah.
But now you're trying out this new sport
Yeah.
that everyone played, and I'm guessing pickup games, you know, a lot of young men and women play football, so it's not as if women playing football is this foreign concept. But what do you remember from that first time you suited up, and when did it hit you like, okay, I've got some learning to do here, if you know what I mean?
Probably just like our first couple of practices felt super out of place because the footwork and the mechanics are so much different from basketball. Like, I have to get down and, you know, take low steps, and, you know, you're driving with your hand and your hips and just shooting out. It's just all different. And like being like a newcomer to that sport, you just have to get your body aligned with what you're working with and just all of that. And it's like, it's hard to just come as just someone who's never played football and try to like work positions or do something. But one good thing about football is just like, it doesn't take a lot of mechanics. Like, I mean, no, it takes mechanics. It's just like, it's completely different from basketball, you know, like dribbling. It's just like it could take you years to be like a dribble master, but it could take you like a good 6 months to figure out how to get off the ball right and just like be a good D or O lineman. So.
And I feel football, there's a lot more variety too, whereas basketball, I'm guessing you're more of a low post player, but you don't have to square up your body differently or position it differently.
Yeah.
Because in football, you play up at the O-line, D-line, but how they approach that position is going to be different from a running back or a receiver or quarterback. So I think there's a lot more to it. Was there anything from basketball that carries over? I know you mentioned the mechanics are different and the objective is a lot different. In football, you're trying to tackle people or get the strip sack, etc. In basketball, you're not necessarily trying to tackle people because that would get you tagged for a foul. But what does cross over, and what do you think the two sports have done to help you become a more polished athlete?
Even though the footwork is different, they do end up colliding. Just taking, those short, small steps, just lateral movements and things you would use on the basketball court, they definitely do match up. I love using the swim move when I'm in the middle block, when my teammate's shooting a free throw to get past my defender to get a rebound. So it's just small little moves like that I could use in basketball that I took from football.
And you mentioned you felt it was a quicker learning curve, a quicker time to get the gist of it for football. When did you get the feeling that you understood what you were doing? Because you talked about the awkwardness of playing for the first time. As you got more games, more reps in, how did that change? How did your confidence change?
Probably the end of 8th grade, like the beginning of freshman year. I really figured out how the game worked. And just like doing a bunch of breakdowns with my brother, he loves watching film, he loves doing notes, so he'd make me sit there and do it with him. And it's just, I get the concept way better. And the confidence part of it, it's just like, and I wasn't hesitant at all. I mean, I remember back when I started playing, I didn't know if I should do this or if I should do that. But once you know the plays and you know what you should be doing, it's just, you got to have the itch to do it. You want to be eager to get that tackle or eager to make the good block. So
with basketball, I'm guessing you've seen your share of games when time allows. So during college football, NFL season, well, I'm guessing you probably go to some St. Thomas games.
Yeah.
But are there any teams, are there any players, teams that you follow that, I don't want to say you're trying to imitate, but much like South Carolina and Dawn Staley and what she's been able to do there, is there anyone from football, after you took up the sport and kept at it, that you try to mimic or draw inspiration from?
There's a lot of good players out there, but I love college sports, period. College is where it's at. I love college sports. Trente Jones, he was recently just on the Michigan, and he just got drafted to the Green Bay Packers, but he's on medical redshirt just because whatever's happening to him. But he's a great player. He does a lot of content on TikTok, just like he's a good creator, and I love the way he pushes himself and just the drills he does to make himself a better player. And I look up to him a lot because he struggles with a lot of things, but he still finds a way to like push through it. So, it's just inspirational to me. And of course, my brother, I love watching him, and I love watching him make the right plays and just be a good football player. It makes him happy. It makes me happy too.
So how long do you think the two of you have spent breaking down film sessions of each other's games?
I could hours, hundreds of hours, for sure. He is a film maniac. When it comes to my film, his film in general, he loves breaking stuff down and explaining them to me and helping me become a better IQ player when it just comes to sports, period.
You mentioned it's something that a lot of friends of yours played. So what was the reception like when you suited up for the first time in 7th grade? And I guess everyone's had a chance to get used to you playing football, but
yeah.
How have others responded to seeing you out there? We're seeing more women participate, whether it's in high school. Sarah Fuller, of course, the first woman to score in college football when she subbed in for Vanderbilt. And the WFA has several teams. But when you're out there, how did everyone else take to you putting on the pads and doing what they've been doing?
I mean, of course, at first it was surprising. It was super shocking to a bunch of people that I would even have like the guts to do this and playing a scene with a bunch of boys. But as time went on, of course, they adapted to it, just like you said. And I was not seen as like a girl on the football team. I was just seen as part of the football team, and that's like the ultimate goal. That's all I wanted.
What do you enjoy most about the sport now that you've had a chance to get familiar with it over the years? What excites you when you take up those camps, and when August rolls around, I'm guessing we'll be seeing you get some varsity time this year. What excites you most when you're out there in the football field?
Man, just the feeling of the Friday night lights. It's a crazy environment. And football is just such a community bringer. It's everybody will come out, grandparents, old people, young people, kids will come out to see everybody play on that Friday night at Goodrich Field, and it's just like, wow, this is like what binds this community together. So just that feeling of running out of the tunnel and all the people cheering and just the lights on you, it's unmatchable.
Now, when you decided to participate, did you want to go to the O-line or D-line? Did you want to try out other positions? How did that work? I ask because I honestly have no idea, not having played myself, what that's like. How did you get into the front lines?
If you're big, O-line, D-line, you don't need to think about it too much. Fast and skinny, go play receiver, can throw the ball, quarterback. You don't need to think too much on it.
Have you ever talked to coaches? Have you ever thought about being a receiver or being a fullback?
No.
You don't want to do that. You're just happy tackling people.
Yeah.
I see. So football was this way to get this long-awaited desire just to tackle people and not get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you didn't do a ton of that, or maybe outside of your typical sibling stuff. I'm guessing you didn't go around trying to tackle people.
Not really.
Well, you mentioned the awkwardness of going up for the first time and trying to pick up on the mechanics and footwork. Do you remember the first time you got a tackle or a sack? Tackle for a loss or a sack or a fumble? Just something that told you, I belong. Like, yes, I'm here. I belong here. Do you remember that moment and what you felt? We've highlighted your awkwardness, but it seems like you have much more excitement and enthusiasm now.
Yeah.
Do you remember that first time that convinced you, yep, this is my sport?
I remember it was a Central Park. It's this jamboree thing we do with a bunch of other youth teams, and we come and we play a scrimmage type game, and it's controlled. But I remember lining up D-line for the first time and getting my first tackle and just being like, wow, I can do this. And it just made me feel like no matter what anybody says, I just did that, so nothing else can stop me.
How have your teammates, coaches in other sports, how have they taken to it? Because I think it's more of an old wives' tale, for lack of a better phrase. Sometimes you'll get folks that say you shouldn't play other sports or you shouldn't do this because you might get hurt. How has everyone else at Anoka taken to you being a football player in addition to being a basketball player and a thrower in track?
Obviously my head coach doesn't like it too much just because he doesn't want me to get injured, but I've assured him that me playing other sports than basketball will make me a better rounded athlete, just like in athleticism. So, he's been on board since, and he's going to support me no matter what. But we also have our football coach, our running back coach is also our assistant coach for our basketball team, and of course he's on board for me playing. So, it's been pretty easy with coaches because they just want what's best for me.
And I suppose with that crossover too, one of your coaches being an assistant will probably make sure you don't do anything too outlandish to hurt yourself in basketball. Well, how has the basketball experience been for you? Because I know this last year you played some time off the bench. You haven't been a primary player yet, but it's not like you just sit around and don't do anything.
Yeah.
But how has that process been like for you, considering where you started in kindergarten to what you've been able to do since then?
It's just a blessing and an opportunity to just be where I am right now, and I'm so grateful to God that I can be here today and just do this with you right now, and the opportunity that I had to sit on the bench. I say opportunity because sitting on a bench is a great thing. It gives you time to become a better player and just to watch the game unravel in front of you. So I wouldn't even count sitting on the bench as a disadvantage. It's just that coming off the bench after getting a feel for the game from watching it, it helps a lot. It's really easy.
And I know in the case of Anoka, the last couple of years, they had that dual post tandem in Maddie Frecking and Lydia Laakkonen. So it's not like your services weren't needed, because it was clear you could hold your own, and I went back and saw a few of the plays, highlights you got to make this past season. But that is an interesting take, especially in an era where you probably hear all the stories about folks clamoring for playing time, and I'm sure you and everyone else wants to play.
Right.
Why do you see that as a learning opportunity? And I'm not suggesting that you are complaining about playing time, but compared to what you might hear other folks say about it, you are telling me I get a chance to see the game, study the game, and I suppose there's no pressure, but what is your take on it? Because that is a pretty thorough, what's the word I'm looking for? Intelligent approach to the game that I don't always hear about.
Yeah. I feel like, of course, as a player that loves the game, I want to play in the game. But if I slow myself down and I just get to analyze things before I just jump into the game, it makes me play so much more better. It makes me play so much better. Yeah, it makes me play so much better just being able to see the game and see the different habits a player has, or look at who I'm guarding and see what she likes to do and what move, or how the help defense collapses every time we drive. It's just simple things like that that make or break the game, and I get to see those before I step on the court.
And what have you learned from the likes of Laakkonen, Frecking? Because I'm guessing you'll be moving into that spot yourself a little more frequently these next couple of years. Lydia has done a lot of great things for Anoka, as she, I think, just graduated, and Maddie, also a pretty stellar post player. How have those two helped you get acclimated into the low block, into the paint?
Honestly, just basically giving me more confidence. As a post player, the default is just get down in the paint, get the rebounds, give me a drop step layup. Those are just the things that we've been put in that box. And Lydia and Maddie have showed me that you don't have to always do this one thing. I can bring it out, and I can drive on somebody, and I can go up for offensive boards, put it back out. I don't have to kick it out all the time because I want to share the ball around. I can take it for myself if I know I can make this play. And so they've just given me a lot more confidence to be a better post player.
And I guess we got a taste of that at the Triple Threat event, where you even got to bring the ball up. I noticed you had kind of a coast-to-coast play.
Yeah.
And that's something I've seen more of now. They call it the stretch fours. Is that something you're working on, trying to expand your game in basketball?
For sure.
So are we going to see a little point guard out of you these next couple of years?
I hope, yeah.
And basketball being your first sport, what do you feel you've picked up or learned, attained over the years from getting all those reps in? You mentioned the learning curve maybe a little longer and a little bigger than football, but you've also had a chance to refine, develop all your skill sets as you grew into your body, and here you are getting a chance to play. What would you make of your progression as a basketball athlete?
I feel like I spent a lot of countless hours with my brothers just outside working on every single detail of my game to make me the player that I am right now. And I feel like I've made a lot of good progressions. Maybe at some points, like maybe I'll plateau and I'll get stuck at this area where I feel like, oh, I'm not the best player I can be right now. But that's when you go back to your basics and you just get in the lab again. You craft your moves and you make them perfect and you perfect them and you just keep pushing forward.
What moments, if there are any, maybe perhaps this past year, that indicated to you that you are still growing, evolving as a player? Because I got to see a little more of what you're capable of at triple threat, but you also had a chance to make a few plays as a sophomore at Anoka. How do you feel you've taken a step forward when you look back on the chances, the opportunities that came your way this past season?
I feel like just doing something with the ball in my hands. I feel like at moments I can find myself standing and not knowing what to do and just giving it up because I don't have an idea what I want to do with the ball, just because, again, as just like a post player, a big player, you've been put in this box. Go down low and do this, do that. But I feel like I have, my IQ has changed with that, and it's just like once I get the ball, I know what move I want to make on my defender. And I had a lot of moments, I feel like this last season, where I still had that, like, no thoughts in my head with what I want to do with my ball, what I want to do with the ball in my hands. But I feel like I also had moments where I know exactly what I wanted to do, but it's just about being hesitant and not making that move. But I feel like I had a lot of good moments and good moves this past season, but I don't think it was the best I could have did. So I'm excited for this upcoming season to show the whole conference what I can do.
As you stated before, you're not one to quit easily, so
Nope.
I would like to think there's a few more big moments coming your way, and I suppose AAU gives you a chance to prep for those as well.
Yeah.
Getting a chance to play there. And then track. I know basketball track is a little more common as far as crossover sports, but when did you take that up as a third sport to this pretty busy itinerary that you've got?
Yeah, my freshman year, I played with Lydia, and she begged me to do track just so we could be together for like another season, I guess. And so I did it. I was all right, but like I obviously got better this past season, and I'm just glad that I did this and had the time to be with Lydia before she graduated.
Is that something you'll still do now that Lydia's graduated? Because she can't use track anymore as a vessel to hang out with you. I forget where she's going.
Winona State.
Winona State, so yeah, it'll be a little further out. Are you going to bug someone else to join you now next year?
It depends. I might play lacrosse next year, pick that up.
Okay, well, lacrosse, that's another way to pick up a few pointers. I don't know too many basketball lacrosse crossovers, so that would be a lot of fun. What have you enjoyed most from track? You got to hang out with Lydia for a little bit longer, but what else did you gain out of it?
Track is super detailed. So many things build up that throw for it to go further. Like it's like you got to stay in the balls of your feet. You have to rotate with your hip. The blocking hand, just the way you push the shot put out of your face, it has to be at a 45-degree angle for it to go. Just so small details. It's made me a sharper person, just like in my day-to-day life, just paying attention to detail and just doing everything with that as like a thought in your mind. Because sometimes you can do stuff just aimlessly and just do stuff kind of like robotically just because you're programmed to do it. But track has made me think about things, break it down, and make sure that I'm doing everything with a purpose.
How do you think that will feed into football, basketball? You've had a chance to get used to all three sports now, but that is a fascinating analysis that track, even if it hasn't been your primary sport or maybe you haven't found the greatest success or enjoyment out of it, it helps you pay more attention to detail. I would not have thought of that
Yeah.
just out of the blue. How do you think that has helped you become more attentive with the other sports?
Just when you hear something or when you're asked to do something, you do it exactly how it was told to you. So behind the line for a 10-yard sprint, just following directions to a T. And when you have that type of discipline and you have that type of motor running through you, it just makes everything else easier.
Earlier, I know we talked about this before we started, but I'm curious who you've gotten a chance to meet or what opportunities, what moments you've been able to experience being an athlete, because a few years ago you were featured by the Vixen. I think they came to one of your games or you went to one of their games. Being a young woman playing football, which again is becoming more common but still a rarity. So what benefits, what bonuses, for lack of a better word, have you found just by being an athlete?
Probably just like opportunities to like meet people, you know. Obviously this is a really big opportunity, just being here and talking with you. That's great too. Small things. One thing I love about being an athlete is like the gear we get, the shoes, the backpacks, the clothes. It makes shopping easier because I don't have to go out a bunch because I already have a bunch of stuff from football and basketball and stuff. So it's just small things, and you know, the people that you get to meet and mentors, just coaches, you know. I love the Hopkins coach. She's one of my favorites. I love seeing her at tournaments and things like that. Yeah, just small things.
You mentioned your family has Nigerian lineage.
Yeah.
And you're not the first athlete that I've met who has that background. And the more I do these interviews, these conversations, the more I've learned about some of the sports that they're really into. I think soccer's a big one over there.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you grew up here.
Yeah, I did.
And your parents did they grow up here? Did they come from Nigeria?
They immigrated, and yeah.
I never like to assume.
Yeah, no.
I never like to assume because, hey,
Yeah.
you're you, and that's the important thing.
Right.
But what do you get out of that? You've seen, I'm guessing, the Agumekes and what they've been able to do, both as athletes and in Shanae's case, as a broadcaster. Another good friend of mine, she was a Division I basketball athlete. She works as a physician's assistant now, but she's really enjoys that. I remember doing an interview years ago with a woman with Nigerian lineage who competed on the old show American Gladiators. It was on before your time. You might have heard of it.
Yeah.
Actually, Amazon is reviving it. But her name was Peggy Odita, and she was just dominant. Every competition she took up, she won. But I'm curious, I'd like to hear your take, your thoughts on it, because for the longest time, based on my understanding, there was this impression or this conventional wisdom that suggested they should go into medicine, science, law, and those are admirable career paths, but folks like Peggy Odita, the Agumekes, and even some friends that I've met have also demonstrated you can do just as well. You can have just as much of a good time being an athlete. What role do you see yourself in all this?
With me, I feel like my mom has really preached that to me. She's really been like a big supporter, and she just wants me to be successful with whatever I do and whatever I take up. Of course, any parent would want their son or daughter to be, you know, a lawyer, a doctor, a physician, but that's big in Nigerian culture just because they don't want their kids to be failures, I guess. And it's
I would be hard-pressed to consider you a failure, Deborah.
It's just kind of like a concept they have there. But when you come to America, it's a land of opportunities, what my mom would say. And she came here to give me and my brothers an opportunity to be what we'd like. So I feel like that stigma around that has gone down with years. But I mean, it's obviously still present, especially in Nigeria and, you know, in some homes here with like just parents that have emigrated from foreign countries just because they came here to give their children like an opportunity to do something big, and they want them to do something that they know will like be like a backbone. So
I guess if anyone gives you flack about that, I mean, I mentioned a few examples. I can't believe I forgot to mention her. You probably watched a few of Nunu Aguera's games when she was at Hopkins and now at Stanford.
yes.
I don't know if you are in contact with any of these people, but I feel like, hey, if someone gives you trouble, you'd be like, hey,
Right.
hey, Nunu, can you help me out here? Did any of them specifically perhaps feed into your desire? You know, seeing what Nunu was able to do, she got to play in a lot of national all-star games as a senior last year. She got to play a prominent role with Stanford this year. And again, you probably watched the Aguma case. I'm trying to think of all the other Nigerian athletes.
Maya Naji's one, yes. Great one.
I feel so stupid for forgetting. Well, she, I know, took a break from the game to focus on her medical career,
Yep.
which I understand was pretty intensive. How did I forget about Maya? But how did those people, and if there are others that I'm forgetting, let me know, because it's hard to come up with all these people on short notice. How did they feed into your passion to continue this thing called sports?
Just being a big inspiration and being a Nigerian, and just knowing that we are usually looked at as just like people in like the medical field, being doctors, being lawyers and stuff, and seeing them as women, Nigerian women, going out and being athletes and doing stuff that is looked and like frowned upon in Nigerian culture, it's just amazing. And it fuels the fire in my heart. It makes me want to go out and play even more.
So I have to ask, are there any career paths you're considering right now, or are you still sorting out your options?
I know that, I mean, I just did a school project about college careers, so I would love to be a basketball coach, of course, maybe later in my years. Do something in sports media, broadcasting, that would be super cool. And even education, I love working with children, and that could be a super cool thing too.
Are you telling me that you want to have my job one day?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe you can do all of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I'll keep a spot open for you if you want to try calling a game. I know you're pretty busy as a player.
Yeah.
But I've had some fellow players join me as guest commentators.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you're the people that
Know the game.
my viewer, well, yes, you certainly know the game a little more than I do, but the way I see it, and this is why it's kind of weird when you mention how big this is just to do this conversation. And when I go to games and I get recognized sometimes, I keep forgetting that people are watching or listening to my stuff, because the way I see it, when I go to a game, when I'm covering your game or anyone else, I'm not doing it to promote myself. I'm doing it to maybe tell a story about these athletes. I'm
Right.
thinking in my head, they're not here to see me, they're here to see them. But I will say it is become increasingly harder to go to a gym and not be recognized. You should see the look on my face when people call me out and say they watch all my games on YouTube.
You're at that status now.
Apparently. I'm glad you didn't introduce yourself that way when I got to meet you at Triple Threat. No, I'm kidding. You know what? If it means that much to them, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So we mentioned how the players in front of you, Maya and Nunu and the Agumekes, and I think, she played at Stanford, now she's a broadcaster. I forget her name. She's done a lot of stuff with ESPN. I'm going to feel so silly because, Roz Goldon-Wude, another one. She's been a broadcaster for a long time. You spoke of how all of these figures that you've watched inspired you. How do you think your role, no matter how far you go in athletics, how do you think your presence might inspire the people who might come after you?
I just hope that if they do like take anything from what I'm like doing or saying or whatever they're watching of me, I just hope they could learn like discipline, just to be, and to not let anybody tell you that you can't do something, because you definitely can. nothing is stopping you but you. So it's fun to see and work with little kids and see like the big dreams they have on their faces and just like how the passion they love for this game. I mean, I work some youth camps sometimes, just like as being a basketball player on the varsity team and being a captain this year. I work a lot of youth camps and I work with little kids, and it's fun to work with them, and I hope that they can have fun playing the game and just use the passion that they have and go far with it.
And I know you still have some time to think of college options, and you just did a school project on that. But where do you see yourself as far as college athletics, college education? What would you like to do as you navigate that process, that part of the journey?
I mean, I would love to get a Division I offer from a school I'd play.
Basketball, football?
Basketball, for sure. College football, not for me. those are grown men.
Really?
Those are grown men. I can't.
Really? After all that work, after how quickly you picked up on the mechanics?
Definitely not quickly, but.
Has David tried to convince you to suit up for football?
No, everybody knows that I'm not doing that in college. Basketball is definitely my number one. So, yeah, I mean, I would just want to get an offer from a school, go there and play as much as I can, and do as much as I can with like the time that I have.
Well, I suppose you can always go back to football with the Vixens still around.
Maybe.
Hey, I'm sure they wouldn't mind having you. You're already a veteran. They don't have to teach you the game because you've already played it. But had to tease a little bit with all the work and really how much you enjoy it. It is fascinating and enlightening to see and hear how much you really enjoy playing football, and you're taking up a position that not many women suit up for at your age. Most of the people that I know are kickers that come over from soccer. So here you are showing that, yeah, you can go out there and get a sack, tackle for loss, or put enough pressure on the quarterback to force them into a tough spot. And it sounds like you're exploring all these different career options too. So it seems like you're still sorting out that decision, and you haven't settled on one, which is fine. And who knows, maybe you end up suiting up for all of them. What do you think is next on your itinerary? You mentioned wanting to go into Division I. What steps do you plan on taking these next couple of years to help get yourself to that position? Training.
When it comes to weightlifting, when it comes to getting in the gym and getting shots up, when it comes to like live runs with good players, just putting yourself in game positions so when it does come to the game, you know exactly what to do. So just a bunch of, just getting ready for the actual game.
We touched on this, or you discussed this a little earlier, but outside of sports, you mentioned you like to take up drawing, you are a big movie, book person, so what are some activities when you do get a spare moment? I know it probably doesn't happen often, I'm guessing, with your sports, but what are some things outside of it that you like to do? And I ask that because I try to remind my audience, everyone you see is going to be a lot more than the stat line. These aren't just cyborgs who only play the sports, they do a lot of other things.
I love hanging out with my friends, of course, just because those are the people I spend the most time with, because most of my friends I either play football with or basketball or do track with, so I usually hang out with the people I am with the most. I love reading. I've picked up a couple good books. I'm excited to get into some books this summer, because reading is great for the ACT and just understanding English more. So, and I'm gonna have to take that next year. So it's good to start prepping in the summer for that. And there's not a lot I do a lot. I don't. There's not a lot I do besides basketball. Like, if I really would want to, I'd go on a bike ride, go to a park, and go shoot around just by myself, just because I like the swish that goes in the basketball. It's when the basketball goes into the hoop. So it's not a lot besides actual sports.
So would it be safe for me to presume that you really enjoy hearing me say swish when a player knocks a jumper
I do
through
like
the
that.
basket?
Good onomatopoeia. I like that.
I don't know how that came up. I think I just threw it out there. I do remember I used it the very first game I called, and as I got more comfortable being a broadcaster, I thought, I don't hear this often. I've heard fellow broadcasters use bullseye, which I've mentioned for three-pointers sometimes, and I can't claim credit for starting that, but it is kind of cool to see some of the big names use the same vocabulary that I'm using, but swish, I don't know, I think it was born out of all the games that I watched. I was fascinated by this idea that you could make something out of just talking about basketball.
Yeah.
But some of the higher level games that have microphones in the backboards, that's how you can hear the sound, and they'll bring it up when the ball's going through. So that's how you hear it go off the rim, or if it goes through, you hear that swish and just that sound. It's a cool sound, and so I can't say I'm as smooth as the net is
Yeah.
when it comes to that, but that's one of my go-to lines. But I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit when it comes to understanding English, because you seem to have a pretty good grasp of it from the conversations we've had.
Yeah, it's from honors English. I mean, I take a lot of honors classes, and I'm honestly just around a lot of smart people all the time, so big words find their way into my vocabulary.
So if you're around all these smart people, what are you doing talking to me?
I feel like you're a very technological, like techie guy, so you're smart in your own way.
I'm having a little fun, but I enjoyed words, and I was a numbers guy too, so math was one of my favorite subjects in school, and I know what you meant with English, because that encompasses, the vocabulary, the language itself, but also all the different genres of novels and short stories and poems. So there is a lot more to it than that. But the reason I asked what you do outside of it, you mentioned the reading. You also mentioned that you do some drawing when you get a moment or two.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the best drawer, but just like doing something to get away from everything else that's happening in your life is super good for you, for your mind, for everything. I took a drawing class with one of my good friends. That was one of the best classes I've taken in my whole career of school. Just sitting down there and be able to create things that may not look the best, but just are things, it's just super fun, especially when you do it with a friend.
And on the subject of reading, how many books do you have in your collection, in your bookcase at home?
Not many. I don't get a lot of books.
So you're still working on building that. Well,
yeah.
There's always new ones, but what I found most intriguing when you told me some of your favorites, you pay a lot of attention, I think, to issues of racism, equality, prejudice. Remind me two of your favorite books, the titles?
All American Boys and Bud Not Buddy.
They were on the tip of my tongue, but
yeah.
I figured you would know. Is that something that you took up at an early age? I'm just curious what makes them your favorites, and how do you think that helped you perhaps understand the tangled web that exists in this world dealing with all the social, racial stories and incidents that we're all trying to navigate through?
Honestly, reading those type of books just interest me. I love reading a book that will make me gasp or say, wow, I can't believe this is happening in a book. And it's just when I read a book, I get taken into like the scene of that book, and I get to imagine like the characters' faces, and I just get to make it my own kind of. And what I like about books like All American Boys and Bud Not Buddy is when bad things do happen, I get to see it from both sides, right? Not only, and especially from especially with the book All American Boys, it has Rashad and it has Quinn, and it goes chapter for chapter, just going back and forth between the boys and getting each perspective, and just knowing how both of them feel was just like mind blowing to see, like the perspective from Quinn and the perspective from Rashad. It's just to get to see both of them and how they felt about the situation and what was happening in their mind. It got to me, and it got me to see more than one side of a story.
How do you think that's helped elevate your thinking in a sense? Because I'm not looking for horror stories per se, but it's something that I think would speak to a lot of people who look like you, that have to go through things that maybe folks like me wouldn't have to think about, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Maybe just in the sense that like people grow up differently, and you're going to be a product in the environment that you're raised in. So it's just when bad things do happen, and maybe something racist was said, or just anything of those sorts happen, it's just, instead of going immediately to like lashing out or just getting angry right away, you can see it from a different perspective. And like that's what those books have done for me, and it just makes me stop and think like, okay, this person has this thought process, and this is why they're thinking this, and maybe they think it in a different way. It's just like small things like that.
I think that's a good way of putting it, and I know that's what those movies have done for me, and even some of the articles that I read. No wrong answers, though. I just curious when you mentioned those books being your favorites.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so that tells me this is a woman who has a lot of talent in athletics, but also is doing her best or has some understanding of the world that's out there, and how it's a lot bigger than just us.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I know I asked you this before, but now that we've explored this in a little more detail, is there anything else about you that people wouldn't know if they met you for the first time? Because you mentioned being a football player before, and here we are going into details about how you've become this multi-sport football, basketball, track athlete. What else makes Deborah who she is?
Probably just my family. My family is super lively. I love all my family, my cousins and my aunts, my uncle. Just it's a family aspect, and the way we do things, and the way I am. Again, product of my environment. I'm just trying to grow from them, and they're all great people, and I love learning new things, and they just make me the person I am today.
And with your involvement in youth camps, I'm guessing they're for basketball?
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe you'll do a youth football camp at some point.
Maybe.
You never know, but...
I mean, I've worked a couple just
Okay.
as being a football player.
The reason I mention it, because a question I often throw at people is, what would you tell a younger version of yourself? Well, in your case, you obviously don't have a younger clone of you,
Yeah.
but you get to work with the kids that perhaps have the same goals, the same ideals, the same passions, motivations that you do. So what kind of feedback, what have you learned working with them, and how have they taken to you as a mentor?
Don't be discouraged when things don't go your way right away. That was a big thing for me as a kid. When I couldn't do something that someone else could do, I was just like, oh, I'm so done with this. And just so easy to give up when you feel like you can't do it. But when you tell yourself that maybe I can't do this, it's gonna take me some time, or I need a little bit more practice, it's so much easier to just be okay, and be okay with where you are right now, and just be able to thrive later. It's just that mindset. that a lot of people don't have, and it's hard to have as a young kid, but you have to get into that if you want to stick with what you're doing.
Normally I ask this question for folks that have a little more background, but I feel like this would be fun to ask you and then revisit this if we do another one of these.
Yeah.
So far in your athletic career, what would you say has been the most exciting moment and the most embarrassing moment?
That's a good question. The most exciting moment was probably my first varsity start for basketball. It was exciting, but it was also gut-wrenching.
Was it this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was super nervous, but the game ended up going pretty well. And it was just a really good opportunity for me to like look ahead into the future, and I've never really, I mean, for like AAU games or for like youth, I've always started, but like when it came to regular season and just having so many older people in front of me, I didn't start. So just being able to be in that position was really cool. And probably my most embarrassing moment was actually last season also as well. I had a little bit of a technical difficulty with what I was wearing, and I had to run off the court and go change because just I don't know how to explain it. It was bad.
What did you have your jersey on wrong, or were
No.
your shorts not coming?
My bra got unzipped. Yeah, and
Oh,
I was in the middle of the game and it was bad, so I had to run off the court.
I could understand that. That might get a little awkward
Yeah.
if that ended up on the floor, or I don't know what would have happened.
yeah.
But you know what? You just helped me learn something else that I wouldn't have thought about. Because when I cover men's sports, we don't wear bras.
Right.
Typically. Maybe some do. I don't want to assume. But from my experience, most don't.
Right.
Oh, no. I can't say I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
I also cannot say that is on my list of things to see at a women's game.
Yeah.
'Cause, you don't want
Right.
that to happen to people. And you'll hear me sometimes if something doesn't go right, you'll hear me say, "Oh no, well that would definitely be one of them," because I want to see everyone do well and
Right.
not cheering for one team over another. And you just hate to see silly things like that get in the way. But
Yeah.
that might be hard to top, Deborah.
Yeah, I don't know what I could possibly do ever again to top that. So
Well, if it's any solace, it wasn't your fault. I'm guessing
yeah.
you weren't doing anything intentionally that caused it. It just
Right.
happens. Well, if it makes you feel better, the most embarrassing moments I've ever had came when I was covering the WNBA. I've told this story, but I'll tell you, so, not to make you feel less bad, but just to remind you, like even I've had my
Yeah.
mix-ups and goofs and things I'd love to run back. But at the time, they allowed locker room access for post-game interviews. They don't now, and I've heard different reasons for that. But for the longest time, they would give you locker room access just like the men's leagues. That's how it was always done. The security guard for Atlanta, they were visiting here, thought I was cleared to go in, but I wasn't, because I was going to try to get some quotes for the story that I was writing up. I walked in while the entire Atlanta team was changing out of their uniform.
Oh, that's really bad.
As soon as I realized what happened, I got out of there in about 2 seconds. No, this isn't going to work. So I can't say it's the same as having a bra go unzipped, at least for me, but
Yeah, no, that's
still
pretty
like,
bad too. Yeah.
This isn't right. Let me get out. And people were talking about that story years after the fact. It was an honest mistake, the security guard. She wasn't intentionally trying to put me in a tough spot, but the fact that it had staying power all those years later when people would bring it up and I'm like, yeah, they're talking about what I did. If you ask me most exciting moments, I don't know if I could come up with one because I've covered all 4 Lynx championships. I just got to go to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to say it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to say all my moments were the second most exciting. The most exciting moment hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add about your journey, your story, or just about what sports and what all of these things that makes Deborah Ayeni who she is and where it has brought her? Anything else you'd like to add?
I'm just thankful to God that I had the opportunity to be here, and just the way my life is going is so amazing, and I'm just so grateful and I'm blessed to be here, and thank you so much.
If you don't mind, you did remind me of one more thing. How has your faith helped you through all of these obstacles? And
Man.
it's not, my podcast isn't specifically focused on that, but for people that talk about what makes them who they are, and I noticed you have, I think, Philippians on your social media.
Yeah.
I have a verse myself because it summarizes why I keep going in basketball coverage. But how has that intertwined with your life and experience as an athlete, as a young woman, and how has that helped you, good, bad, and different?
Just leaning on God when I feel like I have nowhere else to go, when I'm confused, when I'm hurt, when I'm tired, when I have no strength to push through anything else. Leaning on God is like the only thing I can do, and it's so good. I did this thing with one of my teammates before every single game. We'd go under the hoop and we'd pray about the game, and just even if we didn't win the game, it's just I'm so grateful that I can just play the game every single day, because there's some people in this life that had dreams to do this and they just couldn't because something stopped them, or they got injured, or somebody died. And it's just the fact that I can sit here and do this today, I just thank God so much.
What quotes, verses, lines, what do you find most inspiring that you channel, whether it's in sports or all the other avenues that you pursue?
I mean, Philippians 4:13. It's a common used verse, but I feel like that's the basis of it. Like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and Proverbs 3:5. That's another one I like, and it talks about how what's it called? Do not lean on your own understanding, because it will fail you. You have to look up and you have to trust God.